It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth, financial literacy educator and speaker, entrepreneur, and chairman of the board of a bank information. Take charge of your financial future with your personal bank. Now here's Ference Toth.
Welcome to the Your Personal Bank Show. Well, I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas. Depending on when you listen to this, of course. It may be Christmas is coming very soon, or it's already passed recently, but we're probably in the holiday season, unless you're listening to this show later on our website, yourpersonalbank.com. But again, I want to wish everybody a very Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that good stuff. This is going to be a little bit different, probably a little different of a show than you would probably expect for the holiday season. And it's because I normally this time of year really talk a lot about the bigger picture things about, well, life in general, right? The things that are important, things that make human beings happy, what's important. And I'll do that probably in the next show or two. I'll do my annual Wheel of Life, which really talks about, again, what's important, how to set goals, all that kind of stuff. I like to do that around New Year's, beginning of the year, because that's always a popular New Year's resolution time. But what I was going to say is that there's so much stuff going on that it's almost at this point impossible to allow for some time to pass, because the way, we've been dealing with frankly, the crisis of the month, right? And, I'm afraid if I don't cover some of the things that have happened recently, it'll just kind of go by the wayside, and we'll not, we will not even hear about it or learn about it or any of that kind of stuff. You know what I'm saying? We just won't have time to cover it. So my point is simple: is I am going to cover some things that are holiday focused, but I'm also going to talk about some other things that would be maybe more part of a normal show, in a normal type of thing. And the first thing I want to say is, there are some Christmas presents that we've received recently. Well, I should put it this way: gifts for fiscally responsible Americans. We'll put it that way. That our government has basically given to us, not by choice, but we got to, Build Back Better has been placed on hold. And Merry Christmas. That is great news, because what that means is, at this point at least, the government's not going to spend another $4 or $5 trillion. At least they pushed it on hold, and the likelihood of it passing next year in an election year is even less than it was this year. The best thing to happen, frankly, for this bill is for better to kill the bill. And that would be truly a Christmas present, because, again, we don't need our federal government spending another $4 or $5 trillion. Now, when I say that, somebody will say, wait a minute, I heard it's supposed to be like $1.7 trillion. Well, the Congressional Budget Office was asked to, give us the actual real costs of this bill if it was funded and the programs in it were funded for the next 10 years, which is what's normal, right? How many times have you seen a government program disappear? It almost never happens. And they were playing accounting tricks, things like they were, proposing benefits and benefits for 1 year, funded it for 1 year, and then just assumed future Congresses would pay for it, but not counting it as a cost. And let's be real. This probably would be around for far longer than a decade even, frankly. But my point is simple, is the CBO came out and said it's going to actually cost about $4 or $5 trillion over the next decade. Of course, this is the same bill that Biden stated would cost nothing. Of course, that's frankly a lie, and most people didn't believe it because it was just so egregious of a lie, frankly. But and remember, don't forget, included in this bill, I should say, was the bank reporting requirement, where the banks would be required to report transactions to the IRS. Originally, it was $600 transactions of $600 or more, and then they changed it to $10,000 cumulative total over a year, which is pretty much anybody with a bank account. Which would basically lead to perpetual auditing. The IRS would know about just about everything, just about every transaction you incurred in and out on your bank accounts. Also, they're funding in that bill to triple the IRS agents. Now, that sounds like something we all need. 3 times more IRS agents to harass or audit Americans who are doing nothing wrong, frankly, in most cases. So those are the kinds of things in that bill, in addition to all the extra spending. So, hey, tabling that, Merry Christmas. Put that on hold, and hopefully it just dies. It's killed and never, ever happens, because that's of all the bills that have come down the pike, the ones that passed, this was the worst of all. So the fact that it's not going through, at least at this point, again, Merry Christmas. I'll give you another one, another gift, and that is the Department of Justice has stopped settlement talks with separated families at the border. If you remember, this was the proposal by the Biden Justice Department to pay up to $450,000 per person to families who were separated when they came across the border illegally. Now think about that a minute. You or I, let's say we illegally tried to cross a border of, I don't know, just about any country in the world, and we got caught. How many of you think that country would then consider giving us money, much less up to $450,000 a person? I mean, it's laughable. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. It's laughable. But the Justice Department was actually seriously considering this. Now, the good news, again, is because people like you and I heard about this, we raised the stink, we raised the fuss, and we said, no, this is crazy. This is nuts. This is our tax dollars. This is our hard-earned money going to pay folks who are, one, not even citizens, two, came here illegally, so that means they've broken the law. They're a criminal, okay? And you're going to reward them by giving them money? I mean, not only is that unethical, it's wrong on every level. It's against the law, in my opinion. But it would encourage, how many more people would it encourage then to come across and illegally cross our border? You think we got a border crisis now? What if that had gone into effect? I mean, that's just it was so beyond ridiculous. I'll say this. When I first saw it, I genuinely thought that it was fake, that it was just, this is a hoax. This can't be real. This is somebody playing tricks or playing a game or what. But as I researched it some more and quickly found out, that no, this was not a joke. This was not fake. It was real. And again, they have stopped. They've shut it down because it's just so wildly unpopular with just about everyone that they just can't on any political level move forward on it. And so again, we have some power, folks. So raising our voices, letting our voices be heard, contacting our representatives, contact your congressman, contact your senators. I mean, all of that. Obviously, they heard the message, okay, and they've shut this down. So again, we got a couple of nice Christmas presents. So Merry Christmas. Now, there's some other things I want to discuss, and then we'll get into some bigger picture things because I want to leave today on a positive note, which we will do. It is the holidays. It is Christmas season, all that kind of stuff. So, but before I get there, there's a few other things I want to touch on. And this one's, I've discussed so often. It's about the debt. And I know this is not an exciting topic, but this is near and dear to my heart because, well, frankly, this is something I have been frustrated about for literally decades. And I want to share this further. And it's nice. It's actually encouraging and refreshing that now many, many other people are joining me in this frustration. And I'm not in the minority anymore, okay, on this. But Biden just signed the bill raising the debt ceiling to over $31 trillion. So it's official. We're going to owe over $31 trillion in the next year. And it's predicted to fund the government until early 2023. And folks, that's if they don't spend the money faster, right? So that's the prediction. All right. One Republican, they voted for it. I'm not sure which one it was. We're going to need to find out who that is. I will, as soon as we do, we'll find out. That Republican needs to be replaced. I'm sorry, I don't care who it is. That is beyond ridiculous. It's actually the previous debt ceiling was $28.9 trillion, which we had hit by basically mid-December. It's now been lifted to $31.4 trillion. It's a $2.5 trillion increase. So, folks, bottom line is what it means is in the next year, roughly, our government's going to spend another $2.5 trillion more than they bring in. So we'll have that much more debt. here's the thing about this article I thought was interesting is when they were talking about two things they talked about. It says they signed the bill narrow. And this is what the how should I say? The article states narrowly averting what could have been a largely self-imposed economic disaster for the country. Now, I vehemently disagree with that statement. See, what I think is by raising the debt, that has created or expanded upon a largely self-imposed economic disaster for the country. What do I mean by that? More debt is going to cause many, many problems, financial problems down the road. More interest payments will have to be made. It will negatively affect economic growth. That will have to be paid back by us, our kids, our grandkids, maybe even future generations, okay? I think it's worse to spend the money than not spend the money. In other words, what about a little fiscal responsibility here? What about spending less? Anybody ever thought of that one? And, I've said this one often, and people say, oh, my gosh, that'll create... No, spend less. I'll give you a super easy one. I've shared this before. About 20% of federal employees are designated by the federal government as non-essential. Why are we paying them? Why are they on the government payroll? Okay? I have an interview with Blake Masters coming up. I'm going to strongly encourage you to stay tuned to Your Personal Bank Show because we're going to be airing that in that'll be aired in mid-January. And one of the questions I'm going to be asking is, where do you stand, and why would a federal government that has this level of debt, right now almost $29 trillion, soon to be $31 trillion, with that incredible level of debt, historic debt, why are we paying for non-essential employees? Folks, they should have pink slips. If I was the president today, by 5 o'clock that same day, I would be having them cleaning out their desks. They're non-essential. Why are we paying them? That's a great place to start. There's a lot of other areas that there could be a significant reduction of spending. But man, that's a great place to start, right? And then the other thing about this article that I just vehemently disagreed with is they talked about they passed this bill, all this stuff, and they said this will allow. It's going to allow the government to keep funding without the threat of default into 2023, some point early 2023, at which point lawmakers will likely go through the whole aggravating process once again. Again, I say, why? Why spend more? Start spending less. Stay tuned in the next segment. We're going to talk about some other things and some bigger picture stuff and some good news. So stay tuned. Don't miss it.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. And if you listen to the first segment, you're probably thinking to yourself, wow, this is, Ference has covered some stuff that, wouldn't necessarily expect right around Christmas. And I guess what it boils down to is, yes, I love Christmas, the Christmas season. I'm going to spend some time with my family, loved ones. In fact, I'm going to be meeting some cousins that I've never met from my Hungarian side. I have a couple of cousins actually live in California. And I'm going to be meeting some of their kids. So I've got some second and third cousins I've never met. So I'm very excited about that. And yes, I'm going to spend some time with my family, and I hope you do too with your loved ones or folks that are important to you. But we have had such a incredibly challenging and fundamentally changing year or so. It's kind of hard to get out of the mode. In other words, I'm fired up, if you know what I'm saying. I'm engaged, and I was never that political before, but I said this many, many times when they started shutting down small businesses, using COVID as an excuse, yet leaving large businesses open, largely open, and letting them to continue to do business, calling them essential. I understood what that meant. They were crushing small business, and I felt like that was a gross overreach of federal power. And I've always had a problem with too much federal power, but that was just, that was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. And I know many people, there's been different things that have occurred over the last year or two that they've come to the same conclusions. It's different things for different people. That's fine. But I guess the analogy I'll give you is I think I kind of feel like the folks who were living in the United States in 1941, and December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor happened, right? And a lot of Americans volunteered to join the service, and they, or were planning to, or did. And they knew they'd be part of the war effort, right? They knew that life was going to change dramatically, and they were going to have to go to war. And maybe they spent their Christmas period that year, and they knew many of them would be their last Christmas together as a family or whatever, right? For a while at least. And so, although the Christmas season was important, I'm sure they shared it as best they could, and they appreciated it. In the back of your mind, you knew they were going to war. They knew there were some things that were going to have to be done soon, and that's how I feel. We're in a war of ideas. We're in a war of the soul of our country. We're in the I was having some of that very discussion, in fact, just today with my wife, who's frankly in some ways more conservative than I am. But give you a quick example is she was helping my daughter, who's in high school, finish up an exam and the question that was asked and was discussed was about health benefits, and should health benefits be free market, government sponsored, or mix? And she asked me my opinion, and any of you that know me at all probably know my answer was free market. And she was more of a mix. She's a social worker. She's dealt in that arena and all that. We have kids. We have a daughter who's autistic who's received some services. She goes, so I kind of lean towards mixed. And I say, here's the problem. One, when the government gets involved in providing any service, it's wildly inefficient, and it oftentimes will cost 2, 3, 4, 10-fold more, frankly, to provide that service than what individuals, communities, charity, or those kinds of things would do. And I said, things like St. Joe's Hospital was designed for folks who were destitute. She goes, what if you needed medical care and couldn't afford it? Well, St. Joe's Hospital is one example of medical care that was designed for those that were destitute, right? And things like, there's others. There's many, many other examples. Charities often stepped in, communities, all those kinds of things before the government took that role over. So one, it's wildly inefficient. Two, it's, in my opinion, it's contributed to the destruction of communities and society. In other words, when the government steps in and becomes the nanny, the big brother, whatever you want to call it, it disenfranchises charities and churches and communities and such to take care of their own. She goes, well, what would we have done? I said, if we lived, back, like she loves the show The Waltons. And I said, okay, if we were back in the Waltons days at a simpler time when we didn't have the government doing those kind of things, we would have been part of a community. We probably would have known the people in our community and interacted with them far more than we do today. Because the community, society was much more interwoven. People took care of each other, looked out for each other. Families did. Family was stronger. Family ties were stronger. And it was all because family was important. It's far less important now. And I said, and she's very, very family focused. I said, we've all seen the destruction of the families. And there's many reasons why. This is just one of them. And I said, the free market allows for people in terms of medical care. There are solutions that would be provided, charitable solutions if someone couldn't afford it. Community would take care of their own. Families would take care of their own, okay? It wasn't perfect, but certainly the government isn't either. And I said, I think the benefits far outweigh the disadvantages. So I'm always going to lean towards free market. Plus, we would pay less in taxes because the reality is part of our taxes we're paying are contributing to those benefits that are paid out to people. And it's also a well-known fact, about half the people in the country pay taxes, the other half don't. So I said, we're a family of 4, so our taxes are supporting 8 people, not 4. We're basically carrying another family. And, sometimes I get tired of it. And sometimes, I'll be honest, I resent it. I work hard and to earn what we do earn, and just like most everybody else does. You understand what I'm saying, most of you that are listening, and it gets a little frustrating when the family that you're carrying or the person that you're carrying may not care, maybe a freeloader or whatever else. She pointed out, well, what about those who can't help themselves, the mentally ill, things like that? I said, I understand that, but again, that's where if you take less from people, Americans have always been very generous. They're the most generous people in the world, always have been. And if you take less from them, they're even more generous, and they're able to be more generous. So I just believe in the human spirit is what I'm trying to say. And I believe in the better part of things. And lastly, probably most importantly, I have faith. And I know that's not a common thing these days, but I said, you know what? I have the faith that if the situation warranted itself, that God would take care of it. There would be a solution, or a solution would be provided, or the right person would be brought in our life, and things like that. And she shared, she said, well, there's been some times in our lives when we were really struggling. I've shared those where we lost our real estate business, and we were really underwater. We had a lot of debt, and there was a period where finances were really tight, and we were really struggling. She goes, we wouldn't have made it. I said, I don't believe that. I believe a solution. I have faith that a solution would have been, we would have tried made every effort to do what we did, but once we ran out of options, a solution would have appeared, or we would have found one, or a charitable organization or something, or a person. Some solution would have come about that would have helped us take care of those medical needs at that time. She says, I suppose you're right. And so that's what I'm trying to say is I have faith in people, individuals, communities, and God, not government. Fortunately, too many people have put government in the place of God. It's now become their religion. Stay tuned in the next segment. We're going to talk about some other issues and some stuff that I think is very important during this holiday season, so don't miss it.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to Your Personal Bank Show. So we're touching on some interesting things, Christmas presents for fiscally responsible people. I've shared the first segment already, where the Build Back Better bill has been put on hold. Now, hopefully it'll get killed. That would be the best solution, but at least it's been delayed at the very least. That way the government won't spend another $4 or $5 trillion, of course, according to the Congressional Budget Office. Okay, means there won't be remember, that bill includes the bank transactions, $10,000 cumulative total that would be reported to the IRS in any given year. If you have over 10,000 cumulative transactions, that's money in and out. IRS is going to know about all of it, and that will put us under perpetual audits. And the bill includes tripling the number of IRS agents, so they can harass us. So that's good. And the Department of Justice has stopped settlement talks with illegal families separated at the border, where they're going to pay up to $450,000 per person for illegal immigrants who crossed our border illegally. And I'll say that again, illegally, broke the law. They're criminals. They got separated. They deserve nothing. Okay, I'm a first generation. My dad escaped Hungary and the Soviets. He came over here legally. He went through the process. And if you ask any legal immigrant what they think about illegal immigration, you're going to find they're going to pretty much respond the same way, with rare exceptions. Okay, so Merry Christmas. Those are great gifts. Unfortunately, the debt ceiling has been raised to $31 trillion, $31.4 trillion. They anticipate that they're going to spend that by early 2023. We'll see. I mean, I don't believe them. They may spend it faster, but that increases the debt by another $2 trillion over the next roughly year. So that's not good news. But my solution, spend less. Boy, that's a novel concept, isn't it? But here's what's interesting. One of the commonly accused, I see, in posts and notes and chats and various things, where I'll see somebody who's a liberal or whatever, Democrat. They often accuse Republicans of only being concerned with the debt when Democrats are in charge. Well, let me refresh your memory a little bit, those that don't remember, because the debt, I've been concerned about the debt since Bush Jr., by the way. First of all, Bush Sr., if those remember when he said, read my lips, no new taxes, and then 2 years later he lied and did it. What happened? He didn't get reelected, and that was one of the main reasons. So guess what, folks? Republicans and conservatives in particular were concerned about spending. Okay, Bush Jr., the compassionate conservative, he's a moderate Republican. Let's face it, and he's not a conservative. I had a lot of problems with him spending, in my opinion, too much money. Today he would be known as a rhino or Republican in name only, right? So there was a lot of issues with a lot of people with the spending with Bush Jr. Trump, unfortunately, Trump wasn't concerned about the debt much at all. And unfortunately, neither was just about anybody else. And so he didn't address it, I think. I think that was a mistake. And I said so during his administration. But because nobody really was concerned, it's very few. There was a few outliers like me, but we were, like lone wolves almost. Nobody seemed to be concerned about it. He wasn't either, so nothing was done about it. And again, that was a mistake. Here's the facts. Let's forget about all the political stuff for a minute. Let's get to the facts. And here are the facts. Every single president since Calvin Coolidge has increased the debt. And that's since the 1920s, folks. In fact, the last fiscally conservative president we've had in this country was Calvin Coolidge. He's actually one of my favorite presidents, by the way. And there's a great article here, and I'll post this on our website, and it's called The U.S. Debt by President by Dollar and Percentage. And this was a great article because this really shares some of the facts. It depends on who increased the debt the most. And like they say in this article, it depends on how you measure it. In other words, if you measure it by percentage, of debt to GDP, basically, Franklin Roosevelt was the one that increased the debt by the largest percentage, over 1,000%. Now, to be fair, he was dealing with the Great Depression, which I think was a mistake to spend a lot of the money he did spend. But he was dealing with World War II, and that was a far more serious and spent far more money on that. And that was a far more serious challenge. So I'll give him a little bit of slack, at least on the World War II part. Woodrow Wilson was the second most. He increased the debt by 723%. He was a terrible, terrible president. He was the first progressive president. He was the first one to call for, he did not like the U.S. Constitution, and he's often known and called the father of progressivism. And just a president, I think was very, very bad for our country. By the way, and I know this is going to be sacrilege for a lot of people, but number 3 on the list was Ronald Reagan. Now, there's a lot I liked about Ronald Reagan, but one of the things that I think was a missed opportunity, he increased the debt by 186%. So that, there was a lot of increased revenues, and there was a lot of great things that he did, but the debt did increase under his watch. And again, I feel like, looking back on it, that was a missed opportunity. Number 4 was George W. Bush. Okay? He increased it, like I said, but this was Bush Jr. He increased it by 101%. So, and then Barack Obama was number 5. So stay tuned in the next segment. I'm going to talk about increase in debt per fiscal year and such. We'll talk about that further. So really, I'm going to encourage you not to miss it.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show, and we're going to wrap this up today. And again, Merry Christmas to everyone, and a Happy New Year. I hope you're having a wonderful time with those that you love, and this is a time of refreshing, regeneration, all that kind of good stuff, which is something I like to do. And you want to take this time and contemplate and think about where you want to be next year, or what we want to do next year, because folks, we have a war ahead of us. We have a war to win for the soul of our country. And so it's election year next year. It's going to be midterms. That's going to be big. But one of the things I wanted to finish up a thought on from the previous segment, again, I know this is kind of an odd topic, but again, I think it's so important because the debt ceiling just got raised to $31.4 trillion. So sometime about a year or so from now, they're saying sometime early 2023 is what they guesstimate, our debt will be at $31.4 trillion. And I just can't overlook this. It means our government's going to spend another $2.5 trillion in the next year or so, over and above what they're spending. And, the argument is, well, Republicans are only concerned about the debt when Democrats are in charge. And the reality is that's not true. Conservatives are concerned about the debt, have been concerned about the debt for decades now, because the fact is literally every single president since Calvin Coolidge has increased the debt. Now, the earlier times, it was small amounts, so it wasn't that significant, but what's happened is ramped up and increased dramatically each time, almost every administration. The facts are, in this great article I'm going to post on our website, yourpersonalbank.com, it's U.S. debt by president by dollar and percentage. Very interesting. And it talks about how the debt has been increased by administration, both by percentage and dollars. And the top five presidents who contributed the debt by percentage was Franklin Roosevelt. He increased it by over 1,000%. He did fight World War II. That was the biggest part of it. He also spent some money in the Great Depression that probably shouldn't have been, some of his programs, but whatever. Woodrow Wilson was the second most, 723%. A lot of people forget how really, truly bad of a president he was, in my opinion. First father progressivism, second most percentage-wise increasing the debt. Started the income tax during his administration, allowed that to occur. I mean, I don't think anybody likes that these days. Ronald Reagan, by the way, was number 3. He increased it by 181%. Now, that's bad. He's at third place percentage-wise. But if you think about the top two, 1,000 and then 723%, that's incredible. It's quite a drop. George Jr. was in fourth place. I told you he increased 101%. I was very unhappy with that because he did that. And Barack Obama is in the fifth place. He increased 74%. Now, to be fair, he probably would have done more. He tried, but he didn't after his first 2 years in office. He didn't. He had a Republican, if you remember, he had a Republican House and Senate to deal with, Congress. So he had a lot of his program stymied, right? But here's what's interesting. If you look at it by debt increase by fiscal year, number 1 on the list already is Joe Biden. He hasn't even been in office for a year. As terms of the total dollars increase, he's already, in less than 1 year, increased the debt by more than any other president in U.S. history. This is why people are so frustrated, because it's the rate of acceleration of the debt that's gotten out completely and totally out of control. It's nuts. By the way, number 2 is Donald Trump, then Barack Obama, then George Bush, then Bill Clinton, and then George H.W. Bush, and so on. My point is, each president is basically kind of topped the one before it. The rate of increase of debt has increased each and every administration. And folks, it's unsustainable. It has to stop. Period. So the midterm elections next year are going to be a big part of that. When I interview Blake Masters, candidate for U.S. Senate for Arizona, he'll be running against the Democrat Mark Kelly if he wins the primary, the Republican primary. I'm going to be asking him about a balanced budget amendment, for example, where he stands on fiscal policy. My point is, we need to support and encourage candidates that will be fiscally responsible and fit the belief systems and what's important to us, help them win the primaries. Because here's the thing I learned too. I didn't know this. But the Republican Party is neutral until whoever wins the primary, and then they support that candidate against the Democrat. So my point is, you need to find the candidates that you believe in, and we're going to be sharing more of that as we go forward into next year. It's going to be a lot of exciting stuff coming up. But you need to do that to help them win the primary, get over the primary hump. Then the party will take over, and with their firepower and money and everything else, help them win the general election. We have to get involved in the primaries, and if the Republican primary is in early August 2022. So next year is going to be a big year for us. So one other thing that came up real quick, and I keep forgetting to mention this. My first speaking engagement is coming up January 13th in Phoenix. I haven't spoken publicly to a group for it'll be 2 years. because of COVID. So I'm really excited about it, and it's going to be it's Business Minds Unite. You can go to businessmindsunite.com, okay, and learn more information and get tickets or whatever. It's going to be, again, Thursday, January 13th, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the, Renaissance Phoenix Downtown Hotel. It's going to be a bunch of speakers there. It's going to be all kinds of business speakers, motivation, well, not so much motivational stuff, but educational, mentorships, marketing, all kinds of different things, very successful people, and I'll be one of the speakers. If you want to meet me, come out and go to businessmindsunite.com, and January 13th, come out to the Renaissance Phoenix Downtown Hotel. It's going to be fun. I'll be sharing the personal bank concept and some paradigm shift in thinking about money, in other words, how the wealthy think about money, how banks and family offices and corporate finance boards and things that you can incorporate yourself to make your money go farther, because with inflation the way it is, it's more important than ever. Now, the last few minutes I have here, I want to share a couple of thoughts here. The last real thing I wanted to share, and this was really irritating to me, where Biden just recently talked about, he warned of winter of severe illness and death for the unvaccinated. Now, first of all, that just frankly rubs me the wrong way. That is fear-mongering, spreading lies. He's referring to the Omicron variant and things like that. Scientists, experts, medical experts all say it's too soon to tell what it's going to do, how it's going to impact people, although everything so far shows that seems to be, although more easier to catch, far less severe. So far, only one person has died from it. And the symptoms seem to be less. And he's just fear-mongering and just sharing lies and really, really being negative and down and being a real downer. Okay, you don't motivate people that way. In other words, Biden, have you ever heard of leadership? Have you ever in your life even picked up or read one book on leadership even? In other words, you don't inspire people to do things, to accomplish things by talking down to them, to lying to them, fear-mongering, trying to cause fear and division and all those things. And, we're sorely lacking leadership. That's what's so frustrating, and frankly, unfortunately, we're going to be probably stuck with this for a while, because if he led a company or corporation, let's face it, by this point, the board, whoever put him in charge, would have booted him out and gotten somebody else in charge, because the company's not going to move forward with someone like that, right? Where's the leadership? Where's the inspiration? Where's the uplifting? And all we keep getting is political games, lies, fear-mongering, all this stuff, and it's just really frustrating. And when you particularly put on top of that, the FDA recently just added a warning to the J&J vaccine for a possible link to a rare neurological disorder, and apparently, like out of 100 cases, 95 had to be hospitalized. The CDC also just recently recommended not to take the J&J vaccination, because they actually finally admitted that there's finding dozens of people have developed a rare clot condition. And by the way, of the 54 confirmed cases, it seems to have most of them had to go in intensive care. In other words, it's very serious. Okay, and some of these issues, like one of them affects men over 50. Another one affects women. In other words, the point I'm trying to say, blood clots, all this stuff. In other words, although it's rare, granted, the side effects are serious. And getting COVID, by the way, fairly rare, and the side effects, for the most part, are not very serious. For someone who's healthy and who takes care of themselves, does things to boost their immune system, like eat right, exercise, take vitamins, supplements, various things like that, boost your immune system, right? Doesn't have any, he doesn't have any medical. See, what would leadership look like? How about thinking about looking at ways to prevent getting sick from COVID or any other illness for that matter? What would you do? Well, what does the medical profession share with us forever? Eat right, exercise, get plenty of rest, right? Lose weight, stop smoking, all those kinds of things. Right? We all know this. I haven't heard any of these quote-unquote Dr. Fauci or any of these other CDC people or anybody else talk about any of that. What are they afraid? Are they going to hurt our feelings by being honest and tell us the truth? Maybe. Might be part of it. They have an ulterior motive. Are the big pharma, how much money have they lined their pockets with, right? That's my question. Sounds to me like an awful lot. Sure bought some great advertising. We got getting people to push their vaccines, right? Well, I'm sorry. That's nothing more than a legal drug pusher, in my opinion. Sad, but true. And, the reality is there's risks, and this should be an individual decision. People should have the freedom to decide. And stop pushing this stuff down our throat. The vaccines, and they're really not vaccines, by the way. Again, to clarify, a vaccine is like the polio vaccine. It prevents you from getting it. These are shots. The COVID shot is like the flu shot. Ask any medical professional. It doesn't prevent you from getting COVID. It doesn't prevent you from passing COVID to somebody else. If you get it, your symptoms will probably be more mild, just like the flu shot, but it does nothing to prevent. That is not a vaccine. That is a shot. There is a difference, and we should start using that different terminology to make it clear. And that's why it's so frustrating. Oh, and then, what about folks who've had COVID, like myself, who have had antibody tests to show and been told by multiple medical professionals that your immune system is very strong. I do a lot to take care of myself. I do eat right, okay? Try to stay healthy, not overweight, all that good stuff. And I have the antibodies, and far more effective. We've known this all along for not just this virus, but any virus. The natural immunity is far stronger, several studies point that out, than any shot or vaccine for that matter. Yet they won't say the word because, well, they don't gain control over natural immunity. So again, ulterior motive. Let's try a little statesmanship. Let's try a little honesty. Let's try some leadership. How about some inspiration? In other words, here was one of the things I loved about Ronald Reagan. And I was a kid when it happened, but I still remember this. Our country was facing high inflation, the OPEC oil embargo. We had a crisis of confidence. In fact, there was a famous speech that Jimmy Carter gave called the Malay speech where he blamed Americans for using too much energy. And the country was down. And a guy came along named Ronald Reagan who inspired the country through leadership and confidence and encouragement. How about a little of that? That would be a great Christmas present for our country. So as always, stay tuned to the Your Personal Bank show. And if you want to contact me for more information, toll free 866-268-4422 or yourpersonalbank.com.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. This show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information. The presenter and guest on this program do not engage in legal, accounting, or tax advice. Professional advice regarding your situation should be sought if required. Products and riders may have limitations and may not be available in all states. Excessive unpaid loans may affect performance. Distributions may become taxable if not managed properly. Replacements may not be suitable for everyone. There may be charges when replacing coverage. Compare when considering a replacement. Dividend rates and baseline of credit rates may change. Contact yourpersonalbank.com for current rates.